And let me see if I can find my screen. No. Okay, this is Judi, and Judi has 8,000 files open on her computer at all times.
We get a glimpse into it, huh? Into your life on the computer.
Oh my God.
If
Don't
you hit the
ever
wrong
ask
thing.
uh Cheryl Grantano about my computer. That's a story for another day. I'll tell you real quickly because it's funny. I went to her house one time because my printer broke and it was right before conference and I was printing a bunch of stuff. She said, come use my printer. So I did, brought my laptop because all the files were there. But I had to like go through my SharePoint for work. And so for whatever reason, I logged off, I did everything, but for like 2 years, she could still see like when I was logging in and working, and it's very bizarre. She had to call experts in to get rid of it. Okay, so we are in our fifth workshop on this topic, which is hard to believe. This one is called Creating an Inclusive Club Environment. So we've been talking up till now quite a bit about inclusivity, how we can empower each other to have authority. That helps people feel more included when they have a say in what we're doing. We're talking about embracing, which is accepting things as they are, as they change, being willing to um, hold on to what our clubs are doing in whatever fashion they happen, and evolving, which is kind of where we are landing now. So evolving beyond what we've traditionally done and think is the right thing to do in our clubs into a mindset that hopefully becomes more inclusive and creates a greater sense of belonging among all of our members, not just a few. Because we want to make sure that we're welcoming, and we want to make sure that we're accepting, and we want to make sure that we are recognizing at all times different points of view, different cultures, different contributions, different skills, different talents. All those make our clubs stronger. And they help us work together instead of working against each other. I know you all have examples in your clubs of when we don't do this well. Some of you are more perfect than others. Nobody's perfect. So, the goal of this is really to recognize primarily what we're doing unintentionally. I think when we intentionally are creating cliques or divisiveness in our clubs, we kind of tend to know when that's happening. So we're focused a lot more on what's happening that we're not even aware of. So up until now, the kind of goal has been to create that awareness of what we don't see and what we don't know, and get us intentionally thinking about different points of view and how we can be inclusive. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about actually making that happen rather than just talking about it. We're never going to be perfect in this front either. But our goal is to recognize, what's missing, who's not part of the conversation that needs to be, who's staying silent when they have a point of view they could be sharing, who in our club is willing to adapt, evolve, change, according to what's happening around us, and who's not, who's stuck in their ways, all things that we're learning to recognize. So tonight, here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover how our everyday practices can unintentionally exclude members or potential
Judy,
members. Yes.
can you, right now it's showing it as slide 3 of 10 and it's
Uh-huh.
small. Can you make it bigger?
I don't know that I can.
Okay.
This is a problem with my work setup
Okay.
as opposed to
Okay.
at home. So I
No
apologize, but we're
problem.
not going to spend that much time here.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Okay, recognize what we do and intentionally identify some common invisible barriers within our clubs. And as always, we'll go through some scenarios, apply some practical strategies to make our meetings and leadership and activities more inclusive. And again, as always in this series, I'm asking you to commit to one concrete change you can make at your club level in the near future. So I want to just talk a little bit about, before we go into some interactive stuff, Just some definitions. So we've covered some of this before, but as a reminder, we talk about diversity. So diversity is who is in the room, who's present, who's there. Inclusion is who's there and who can participate, who's able to participate. Belonging is kind of the next step, which is who feels valued enough to contribute without having to become someone that they're not, or not, free to say what they're feeling without it being criticized, and then that person reverting into silence. So we're trying to create this sense of belonging, right? We want people to not just join our clubs, but to belong. You can say I belong to Seroptimist, or I'm a member of Seroptimist. Kind of conveys a different meaning when you think about it. So I've asked this before, I'll ask again, some of you are new. Think of a time when you joined a group where you technically belonged to the group, but you didn't feel included for some reason. And think about why you didn't feel included. Or on the other hand, if you joined a group for the first time and you immediately felt included, what did that feel like? And what are the difference in those two scenarios about when you feel included versus when you didn't? So you could just think about that, and you have to answer right now. And all of this, I just want to say, inclusion, belonging, it happens over time. It's small, repeated steps of behavior. A potential member could come to your meeting, and we're pretty good about recognizing someone that's attending for the first time, and, we'll over-explain things and try to make that person feel comfortable. And then maybe they join our club, and sometimes, that attention wanes more quickly than it should. And so all of a sudden, where you felt really welcome on day one, now it's day 20 and you feel a little less included. So we want to watch out for those things. So I'm going to jump out of that right now, and we're just going to talk through some common club practices. And I think that you'll recognize most of these, if not all of them. And 2 questions for each scenario. Question number 1, who might we be excluding unintentionally? And question 2, what assumptions are we making? Okay, so let's start with number 1. And I know we have a club, at least one, if not more, on this call that can absolutely relate to this. So scenario 1 is this. Club meetings are held at noon once a week. Okay, Oakdale. Question number 1, who might be excluded from our club meetings held at noon once a week? I'm not asking Oakdale specifically, but you've dealt with this recently. Anybody can answer.
I would
Someone
be
who
excluded for
works.
sure. Yeah. I couldn't be a member because there would be no way I could get there just with my job.
Yeah, so working, some work situations you can get out and some you can't. So we may be unintentionally excluding working women. Who else might we be excluding?
Potentially
Possibly
mothers,
Say that again, Matt.
or mothers or caregivers.
Caregivers, exactly.
Uh,
If it could be your job, or it could be just your role in your family or your life, caregivers, it's hard to get away sometimes during the day. Also, sometimes younger members, may not always have as much flexibility at work as some others. And so getting away is difficult. So we don't do that on purpose. I mean, we don't say we're going to meet at noon so that these people can't come. It's just been our tradition, and it may accommodate a large group of our members, but by doing that, you're unintentionally excluding others. What assumptions do we make when we stick to a regimented time like that? I think we touched on it already.
Tammy
Tammy, are
had
you
her hand.
waving or raising your hand?
Sorry, I'm
Go
raising
ahead.
my hand. So I think that we're unintentionally assuming that people have a life of luxury that can just come and drop anything to be at our meetings when
Yeah,
most
we're
people can't.
assuming that people have this degree of flexibility that may not be realistic. And also maybe assuming that the majority of our members are retired or not working and they have all this free time in the afternoon. Again, not on purpose, but and I'm not saying meeting at noon is wrong, just saying these are the things that happen when we make those kind of decisions. So what are some steps we could take in that scenario to be more inclusive?
Variety meeting times.
The variety, yeah, that's the key. Thank you, Emma, because we can't just say, well, let's meet at the evening, because that could exclude a whole different set of people, right? So it's rotating meeting times. What else? Some of you are doing other things.
We have hybrid meetings.
Hybrid, yeah,
We have a member in Texas and she attends
yeah.
because now we have Zoom.
Yep. I know hybrid can be a pain.
Mhm.
And it doesn't work as well for everything, but it's certainly a way that we can be more inclusive, right? Allow people to participate. What if we're making a huge decision on something? We need to vote. We need club members to vote. How do you manage that when you have a meeting time that not everyone can make?
Heads up ahead of time.
Yeah, you could send
that
it out
they
ahead of
can
time.
Give their feedback on it
yeah.
ahead of time so that they can feel like their voice was heard.
Yeah. I think it's something that's like touchy or sensitive or super critical to your club. You want as many people to participate in that discussion as possible. So I think being creative about how you do that is really important. Okay. Scenario number 2.
Hold on, Michelle had her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I
Simon.
was just going to say, like sending out the minutes very quickly after a meeting so that people who weren't there can find out the information that was discussed right away. Like maybe not wait until like the next, like a whole month
A whole
away.
month. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Anyone else on that topic? Okay. Scenario number 2, another one we're super guilty of. Heavy reliance on acronyms and seroptimus verbiage. Who might be excluded from those conversations?
Newer members.
New members? Who else?
I would say not even a new member. This happened at a meeting just, I think, last month. And one of our members this is her second year. She raised her hand and she goes, Cal, what is SPR? And I went, oh my gosh. So, oh my gosh, because we just use them all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I felt really bad for her, but we fixed it. So,
Yeah,
I would also, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would also say, there's guests who may be interested in Seroptimus. They come to a meeting and we're saying all these acronyms and talking about all these things that we do, and they don't know what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can read the room, right? Like if you're in a meeting and everybody's there and knows exactly what you're talking about, fine. But being inclusive is making sure, mental check, does everyone know what I'm about to be talking about, or do I need to explain it? Tammy?
I started putting the acronyms at the bottom of our agenda for our business meeting so that new members could know what we were talking about. And I just have it there forever now.
Mhm.
I mean, what other people do next is up to them.
So you're jumping ahead, but thank you. Okay, what assumptions do we make when we use acronyms or language that's not commonly known?
We just assume everybody knows what we're talking about. I mean, I was in a meeting tonight and I had to do the exact thing you're talking about because we used words that I knew there was someone new there that would have no clue what these words meant. And so being able to define what we're saying is so important, just clarify. It's respectful, honestly.
Yeah, and does it take that much more time?
Mm-mm.
No?
Mm-mm.
Does it take that much more time to say dream it, be it? Stibby? No? Half a second, if that? I mean, I understand too. I mean, I do it too. I'm not talking to myself always. So I think we can probably easily agree that one assumption we make is that everyone knows what we're talking about and understands our terminology. I think something else that is an assumption we make is that, or something to look out for, is if you're the only one in the room that doesn't understand, or, no one else raises their hand to say, what are you talking about? If you're a new member or a prospective member or a guest, you might not feel comfortable asking because you might feel like, well, I should know this. Everybody knows this. Everything, especially for new members, they're not visitors anymore. They're part of us. So if we're looking for inclusion and belonging, we definitely don't want to ever discourage questions. And we need to work really hard and even ask, does anyone have a question? Anyone know what that means? Whatever. There are lots of things you can do. So adjustments we can make. Oh, go ahead, Carla.
That's what I was going to say. In, working for the government, we use lots and lots of acronyms. I call
Oh,
it
yeah.
acronymity. And I always tell staff, like new staff, hey, if we slip into that, feel free to ask. Like, don't feel like you can't ask, what are you talking about? And that allows people to just, like, it's okay to ask the question, right? Because it's easy to use your jargon.
So that's a
And
really simple thing that really enhances our efforts of inclusion, right? Feel free to ask questions if you don't know what I'm talking about. It doesn't take long. Beth?
actually go to Caitlin.
Caitlin first.
I was gonna say that something that I find that Oakdale is really good at is whenever we have a guest or a new member, we have members of our club just hop right in and be like, hey, this is what we're talking about. This is the fundraiser that we're talking about. Or, we do, if we're talking about like conference, we're like, yeah, we do this every year. We have something that we do during our meetings called Wine Finds and Brags, where we fundraise and women can, whine and brag about whatever they want for a small fee. And that's something that, not everybody who comes to our meetings, whether they are Seroptimists or not, know about. And so I feel that our club members are really good at just hopping right in and being like, hey, this is what we're doing this for. This is the gist of what we do. And yeah, it's not really anything that we have to, assign a role to. It just comes naturally. And I really like that about our club.
That's great. Thank you. Denise?
Sort of along the same lines, when we do our happy dollars at the beginning, and we have a guest, we have each club member say, what their position is if they do something for the club, and what it is. So when we get to the Live Your Dream Award person, she'll explain briefly what that is, and so on. And so that's kind of a nice way to go around. And they get the names of the person, and they also get a feel for what the different positions are in the club and what they might actually be doing if they joined.
Sure. Great example. Beth?
One of the other things that I found is I wouldn't remember the acronyms from meeting to meeting to meeting. And so I like what Tammy does in that then I could look at it and it'll get in my brain, because some people, I'm definitely a visual learner. And so thinking about different ways that people hear things or understand or read or whatever. It's helpful to have it in a multitude of ways. It explained in a multitude of ways.
Yep. So we've kind of already moved into the next step, is what are some adjustments we can make around this? And so we've kind of said these already. Providing some sort of glossary. It could be on your program. It could be just a handout you have available at all times. Normalizing asking questions, make it feel absolutely safe and make sure nobody feels less than because they don't know what you're talking about. Saying out what it is the first time. Say, live your dream. If we say LYD, that's what we're talking about, whatever. Those are definitely steps we can take. Okay, let's move on to the next scenario. So many of our social events are centered around alcohol or cost of doing something, dinner, social, something. Who might be excluded from those types of social events?
Well, someone who doesn't drink, who feels uncomfortable being around alcohol.
Yep, someone who doesn't drink, or potentially even worse, someone who is in recovery and it's
Yes.
just not a good atmosphere for them.
Or someone who's too young to drink.
Or someone who's too young to drink. Also tempting, right?
Yeah.
What other kinds of things?
When it comes to cost, you know, you could be excluding someone who's, on hard times, and
Yeah.
You need to be cognizant of that, and how, might you allow them to participate, but yet make it affordable and not eat into too much into the budget. For example, like today, the Live Your Dreams Award, what we did as a club was we paid for the lunch for our recipient, and we paid for plus one. And that came out of the budget. And then they were allowed to bring others if they wanted to, but they knew well in advance that what the cost of lunch was going to be. And that, that makes it their choice. And they can prepare for that, and they can plan for that. And if it's, meaningful to them, then, they will try to find a way.
Mhm. Is it ever the case where we have club members that just don't have the means to keep up with all the things that we're expecting? Absolutely. Yeah, we do. And what do we do in those situations? Well, let's not get to what do we do yet. I'm jumping ahead myself. Who else might be excluded? So there could be cultural or religious factors that come into play, things we may not even know.
Yes.
And so I'm not saying you shouldn't have events with alcohol, but maybe every event doesn't need to be that. You just like anything. Bye, Linda. Having variety and options and trying to include as many people over the course of time as possible. So what assumptions do we make? This is actually something I'm fascinated by, but I'm just curious what you all think about. What assumptions do we make when we have events like this?
Well, for one, I think, and I can relate to this, I think the assumption, at least from my perspective, when I was relatively new to our club, it did feel like it was just an assumption that everybody wanted to drink at every event, and social events and all of that. And I didn't feel pressure because I don't really drink. I will have like maybe once or twice a year I'll have something, but there actually was a time when I was kind of somebody who is no longer with the club, kind of called me out at a very awkward time and was basically trying to make me feel like I was a goody two shoes, which wasn't the first or the last, but it was inappropriate. So I mean that's an extreme case because it wasn't just I think people are assuming they basically made me feel like I was an outsider at that point. But anyway, just something to think about.
Denise?
Yeah, I kind of resonate with what Pam is saying because I oftentimes worry about people having, some wine and then driving. And oftentimes if we're at an event or something that they have to drive home. And so it kind of I'm kind and I don't drink I used to, but I don't anymore. And so I sort of don't feel like it's a necessary part of everything, but I know some of our members really like to have that.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of torn, as you know, as president, I'm kind of torn. Okay, should I, say no more drinking, or should I, take a more moderate approach and just allow it sometimes, or whatever? I mean, I'm just kind of, torn on the whole issue.
Sure. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, I think one of the big assumptions, and I've just kind of been observing this in life, not even relative to Seroptimus, but there's an assumption that alcohol creates some social connection, right? So much of what we do with our friends, with our social circles, is related to eating and drinking, which I find fascinating. Like, there's got to be other stuff we can do. So, you could say the same thing about food. People with dietary restrictions, people are watching their weight, whatever. And so it seems to be kind of in our society, kind of an assumption that it's some sort of social connection. Hey, let's go grab a drink, right? I mean, we also say let's go grab coffee, but that's usually in the morning. And I think I don't have an answer to that. Just something to be aware of, that there are other opportunities to get together and socialize and do things that don't necessarily involve that. It's kind of an easy go-to. I'm not criticizing it because, I'll have a drink, but I think being aware of how, again, unintentionally, we're not saying, you're not good if you don't come to this event and drink. Nobody's going to say that except maybe to Pam, but that's never our intent for most of us. But we sort of kind of set that up, right? Tammy?
Sorry, I just wanted to say that as a person who has a son, an adult son who is an alcoholic, and people in my family that are alcoholics, I'm not. I will drink. And sometimes I feel maybe awkward when I drink in front of them. So I try not to be silly. But you can't change your lifestyle for everybody. So you just have to be considerate. And that goes for the people that don't drink coffee too. Like, we have some members in our club that don't drink coffee, they don't drink alcohol. It's part of their religion. And we just are respectful of that. Just try to be mindful. You can't please everybody all the time. You just have to be respectful.
Yep.
And you don't point it out.
And don't point it out, right? And don't force it. Like, why aren't you
Exactly.
drinking? I can't tell you how many times I've been asked that.
Yeah.
You don't ever ask anybody that, especially a female. Like,
It's just rude.
It's just not cool. Ruth, go ahead.
I think that in Oakdale, I think that, well, I know I've heard the comment in club that with our fundraisers, unless we have alcohol, we're probably not going to draw in the crowds
People
that
won't
we
come.
need in order to have the fundraising. So, in order to have successful fundraising, unless we have alcohol, we're not going to be able to draw in the people. So it's that balancing act of, being able to attract people who enjoy drinking and be respectful of those who choose to abstain. And, I think we do a good job of it by providing non-alcoholic beverages, and we have, a good selection of those. And generally, if we're having a cocktail, we also do a mocktail. So, I think we do a good job, but, I also think that in all honesty, we probably cannot have a successful fundraiser to the successful level that we want it to be without alcohol.
Tammy?
Just to piggyback off of what Ruth said, in our town, a lot of people spend more money when they drink. So that's a big incentive.
That's true. That is a big assumption we made, which could be true, but maybe not always true. So I think we've kind of covered what are some adjustments we can make to be more inclusive, right? We can offer alcohol-free options without comment, like it's available for anyone. We can choose, conscious of when we're organizing our events and setting a venue, be very conscious of what the cost is going to be. and just vary the types of social activities we do. I mean, we have some clubs that are really good about, let's just get together and do something fun. And it doesn't have to be going out to eat or to drink. It could be anything, but the more those types of things we do, creating variety, like some people want to come and drink, and that's fine. So again, it's just about recognizing what your club looks like and creating avenues for everyone. Okay, we're going to go on to the next scenario, which is we have in our clubs a certain level of expectations around access to technology and comfort using technology. But when we do that, who might we be excluding?
Governor Judi, can you repeat that, please?
No. Yes. We have expectations around access to technology and comfort with using technology.
We have a member who, she's the sweetest, I love her to death, but she will not use email. She doesn't have an email. She doesn't want email. She wants nothing to do with email. So when I send her, and she doesn't love to text, so really the only way I can get her is Facebook Messenger, which just seems so funny to me. So you don't want an email, but you're all about the Facebook. I just love her so much. But I'm finding her, like, not on purpose, obviously, but she's excluded from a lot of things because I have, 42 other members that I send agendas to and forget to post hers to her Facebook account. So this is something that and is it just her? I mean, right now it is, but that could be a thing that we're going to have to come up with. So I'm glad you, so somebody tell me what to do.
Okay, so excluding members that, we're generally saying some elderly people aren't as comfortable as others. That's not true across the board by any means. We're assuming everyone has access. We make assumptions about internet service, and we know that you guys up in the mountains sometimes cut out on us. That's just reality. That everyone has a laptop or a computer or a phone or an iPad or something, some access. So when we say, we're going to have hybrid meetings, that's great, but do the people that are maybe not able to physically come to a meeting, are they people that necessarily have good access to technology and are comfortable using it? So when we depend a lot on technology, what assumptions are we making? We're assuming kind of at least a baseline level of skill. We're assuming ability to check email. We're assuming ability to log into a Zoom. Straightforward for all of you because you're here. But just being aware, and Kelly, you have that member. We have members. I'm sure every club has, that handful of members that you have to reach out to differently. And mindfulness, knowing about it is, 90% of the battle. We're assuming that technology is somehow helping us and making things easier for us. And sometimes that's not always true either, right? Sometimes we're too dependent on it. I mean, so many presentations and things where people just read the PowerPoint and really sensitive about that. So I would just challenge you all to think that, maybe sometimes you don't have technology. Maybe sometimes you just have a meeting and you talk, and maybe sometimes you have a presentation that's not a bunch of slides. Again, it's variety and making it accessible to everybody. So offering options, right? Call in. Most people can at least use a phone. If they can't, that's another story. Making sure that we're providing clear instructions, and we can presume, like, if I give you a Zoom link, you know what to do with it, but maybe that in of itself is too much of an assumption for some people. And so over explaining is, I think, always better than assuming everyone will understand your directions. Okay, here's a goodie. Scenario number 5. We've always done it this way traditions. We all have these. No surprise here. When we do that, who are we excluding? Unintentionally excluding.
I feel like that excludes anybody who has a differing opinion than what the stereotypical tradition is or was.
Yep, absolutely.
I literally saw Kelly's head explode right now because she has this issue in her club.
Well,
No,
I
they
think
have no issues.
how much time you got, Judy? I think that
Shatter my image.
because of two things. Sorry. Because of two things. First of all, I hate that so much. It excludes new members and anybody who wasn't there during that time. But bigger than that, it discourages new members or anybody who wasn't there at that time for putting forth their new ideas because they're like, oh, I'm out then because
Yeah, like that's the worst of all, right?
it's the worst of all.
Do
That's what
we
makes my head
not want
explode.
new, fresh, creative, innovative ideas? And if
Nope.
we're closed off to that,
Yeah.
like, of course we're going to be stifled. And I don't think anybody does this across the board, but we all do it in some way. All of our clubs have these traditions, and some of them are okay, and some of them need to go. And I'm going to brag on Barbara because she's here, and A, I love her, and B, she has been around for a really long time. But Barbara is to me an exceptional. I don't want to say she's older than me. She's the most open, flexible, willing to try something person I've met. Even talking about people in their 20s and 30s, and I love that about her. I mean, she's also, got opinions on things, but that's okay. But I don't, you don't run across that many people of Barbara's generation that are just so open and willing to say, try it. Can't hurt.
Yeah.
Worst you can do is it doesn't work and you go back to the old way, right? And we need to encourage that. And the worst thing we do is, I agree with you 100%, Kelly, you shut down the new idea. And I can't think of anything worse for our clubs than not being open. And especially when you have someone that does have a fresh perspective and they join the club thinking, I can contribute, and then are shut down time and time again because that's not how we do things. Completely not cool. So I know we know this. So the question is, what do we do about it? So what assumptions do we make when we do that? But Charlotte, I'll go to you first.
Well, I don't know if this is an assumption. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a point about, um, again, going back to just having respect for people. So I remember a couple of years into my membership with my club, um, I had attended one of our fundraisers a couple of years in a row, and I felt like it could be improved. I decided, to chair it because who wouldn't want someone to raise their hand to say, I'll chair something? And when I did, of course, a really seasoned member, when I started making some major changes, she just came up to me and said, it's okay to change things, but don't change everything, you know? And I respected her for that. Like I respected that and I did not change everything, And so I think it's, just an important point to make about, you know, they did it a certain way, but it was also very, no disrespect to anybody here, was very stuck in an old way and needed needed refreshing and new energy in it. And then since then it's morphed into a whole nother thing and the original is gone, but that's okay. Um, because it went on to other people who had new ideas and whatever.
Yep.
But the original thing, someone coming in and trying to change something, I was happy that this member said to me, hey, just don't change everything. And she kind of said it a little bit sharp, but I got the message, right?
Yeah. And Charlotte, that's true, because I mean, I come from, besides accounting, like a performance improvement background. And, the key in that is, small tests of change, right? If you change everything at once, you don't know what worked and what didn't. So it depends on the scenario, but yeah, completely changing something, like you have a major fundraiser and you completely change it, not talking about you, Santa Clara, then you do worse, you do better. But if you changed, 8,000 things about it, how do you know which one made it better or which one made it worse? You don't. And so you do have to be cautious. I would 100% agree with that. But I think always changing something small and seeing what happens, because you can always take it back, right? Okay, I'm gonna go to Beth first.
I love that Charlotte observed and saw what worked and what she could add to or change. Sometimes as leaders, we go in and we say, oh, I want to change this and this and this. And that's not necessarily the best way to go about it either. You need to know a little bit about the history, not that everything is stuck in concrete, but you need to understand the culture of the area that you're in. I moved from Southern California, and being in Ceres is very different from being in LA. So understanding how people get together, the social activities, that kind of thing, that was all new for me up here. I had some ideas and I brought some of them in, but they wouldn't have done anything right away. So sometimes you have to wait and observe before you jump in.
Yep. Okay, Ruth.
And I think it's that balancing act too. And when I'm talking about that, it's, how do you be mindful of implementing change that you think is going to be, really good. And at the same time, be inclusive and encouraging and respectful of all of the work that has been done by predecessors, and wanting those predecessors to be inclusive and enthusiastic about the changes.
Yeah.
So being transparency, I think, seems to work so well. And explaining, this is what we're thinking about in terms of change, and this is why we're thinking about this change, and this is where we see, the members going with this change, and giving them an opportunity to weigh in on that. I know it's hard, and sometimes it slows down the process, and it makes coming to a decision about what direction you're going to go seem elongated as well as challenging. But I think it really is the only way that you're going to be successful, because, without as many as possible members buying into the change, you're not as likely to be successful.
For sure. And it is definitely a delicate balance, no question. I mean, in some sense, you want people to know what to expect. Like, you change everything, you could lose people too. So it's really finding that balance. And I can't tell you how many stories I've heard throughout our clubs of, you have a new chairperson for an event and they want to try something new based on their own observation of the past. And the predecessors get super offended, tell them they're doing it wrong, say, you're not following the guide, but I left you all the notes and you just going to change it all. So again, it's just finding that balance. And we always want to respect tradition. But I think we'll get back to the assumptions. One of the assumptions that we're making is that the traditions are good and effective, and they might not be. We might be stuck in a way of doing something because it's comfortable and we've done it for so long, it's easy. But it might not even be close to being the most effective way we can do things. So when we do that, we're making that assumption. We're also making an assumption that if we change something, it's not going to work, or that it's going to kind of take away from our club's identity. So, I will use a couple examples of those of you that are here. So Santa Clara had their classy bag affair for years. They're doing something, they're still doing it, but it's different. Floor is one of the chairs for it. And I know she's excited about, and Emma's supporting it and the club is supporting it. Keeping a lot of the tradition, but making things a little different. I know Oakdale, you've taken your Motor Madness and doing something completely different with branded Highland cows. That's exciting. That's fun. Sometimes just calling something different or changing it up a little creates a whole new set of enthusiasm, right? And you never want to lose the enthusiasm. So we've touched on this, I think, things we can do to make this more inclusive. Periodically review our traditions with a new set of eyes, have someone from the outside comment on it and be open to what they are seeing. Invite suggestions always. And just like we're trying to kind of focus on evolving ourselves, it's also evolving these practices that we have. It's not saying they're horrible, let's do away with them altogether, but sometimes we can just evolve and make them a little better, a little more current or something. So it doesn't have to be like completely change everything. It's just constantly asking, is this still the best way that we can be doing something? Okay, I have one more scenario here. So do our clubs have unspoken norms about how we dress and how we speak, or kind of the level of confidence we show? When we're focused on what someone's wearing or how someone speaks, who might we be excluding from conversations? I don't see this as often as the other scenarios, but it does happen.
Well, I can speak to this because when I was president a few years ago, we had a difficult situation at a meeting. We had a few newer, younger members, which of course we were very excited about. But we meet at the country, we were meeting at the country club then, and one of the younger members happened to come in denim cutoff shorts that day. And several of us had jeans on. There is no specific dress code that anybody for the country club, at least, that anyone was breaking any rules. But we had a member stand up in the middle of the meeting and comment about the fact that, we all should dress more professionally. And,
yep.
yeah. And she's a little bit older than us, but not that much. And
Yep.
it was so inappropriate. And one of our younger members ended up in tears, the one who had cut off shorts on.
I have heard this story, so
yes,
I know it's true.
From the person, probably.
I have heard it firsthand, yes.
Yes. And I tried to shut it down in the moment, but after the meeting was over, I made sure she knew she made her cry. But that's all to say that, that was an extreme case because she just blatantly said it. But yeah, please don't ever make, we could have lost that member over it because she really was, and she could not afford to go buy a whole new wardrobe because she had joined this club.
And that's it. That's exactly who we're excluding. We do not all have the same wardrobe budget, I'm sure.
Right.
Yes.
And especially some of our younger members, and I don't even mean to just classify that group. It could be anybody.
Right.
People on fixed income. We have, you name it. Not everyone is able to buy a new outfit for every single different type of event we have. And it's not reasonable to expect that either. So that's definitely one group we could be unintentionally excluding. And we talk about dress, speech, confidence, those kind of different things, but this kind of gets back to when you have these really kind of shy, timid, quiet members or guests that aren't as confident speaking up and asking questions, then we could be excluding them unintentionally as well. Kelly, oh, you put some in the chat, but I didn't read it.
No, I didn't, but
Oh, somebody did.
Charlotte did, and it was very funny.
Oh, okay.
No, I was just gonna say besides the wardrobe and the costume wardrobes, there's a generational thing. Gen Z does
Yes,
not dress like I dress.
that's right.
Holes in the jeans, super appropriate in that generation, and it's just that could be a consideration also.
Absolutely. Good point. Thank you. Yep. So what assumptions are we making? We're making an assumption that something about the way we dress somehow says something about us, that somehow, you know, professionalism is defined differently for different people. Like, is there a definition of what professional dress looks like? I could ask each of you and you all might have a different answer. Just like anything, when we say business casual, what the heck does that mean? To some, that means jeans.
Yeah.
To some, it doesn't. Like, it really varies. And so, knowing and defining the best we can really help. So things that we can adjust to be more inclusive. Number one, don't point it out. Don't comment on someone's appearance. That's not to say, if you notice over time that, somebody only has one outfit, that's information. You can do something with that, but don't point it out and don't embarrass anyone. We want people that are enthusiastic about our mission, not people that dress well, necessarily. So we're going to move into a different set of scenarios for a different purpose and reason, but just kind of go ahead, Charlotte, then I'm going to move on. So we're almost out of time.
Hey, I just thought of something.
Oh,
What
no.
if you had a member? I haven't experienced this before, but if I did experience it, honestly, I'm just being real with you all, it would bother me. What if you had a member who had very bad BO? You know? And in our culture, that's not typically a problem, but in other cultures, it can be a norm, right? And I mean, just like the scenario Pam talked about earlier, I mean, I would imagine, I don't know how I would handle it. I mean, I would think, I mean, well, I mean, in Pam's scenario, obviously you pull the person aside. There might be a country club rule, hey, no cutoff
No, I
jeans
checked.
or
There
anything,
was
right?
not.
Well, anyway,
Of course you checked.
I would think
There
there
could have
would.
been.
I think there would be a dress code at a country club. I'm just saying that would be most likely the case. But, handling it and pulling aside a person and explaining, hey, we have a dress code, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But in a BO situation, how would you handle that? I mean, would you just have to just suck it up and ignore it? I mean, I guess you would. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, there's no easy answer to that,
yeah,
Charlotte.
I
This is a
know.
question it gets posed a lot everywhere, Reddit or whatever. Like, how do you politely have that conversation with someone? I don't have the answer to that.
I know. There's not one. I
Well,
shouldn't have even brought it up. I'm sorry.
you
It's
know,
okay. It's okay.
I do have maybe something to contribute here is, that it kind of also goes to the subjects of colognes, and there
Yes.
are
Yep.
a lot of people who have sensitivities to colognes, and
Yep.
I think some people are just not aware that they have sensitivities, and so maybe if they do have maybe if someone does have a significant cologne, maybe just speaking to them and helping them be aware of, there are people who just get migraines if they're
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
a powerful scents. And, that's my nursing background is,
Yeah.
nurses are never supposed to wear
Right.
any cologne, maybe baby powder, and that's about it.
Yeah, I can tell you,
Because,
I somehow feel like that's a slightly easier conversation to
yeah,
say,
it
hey, your
is.
clothes too strong, but it's similar for sure.
It is. And, there are a lot of people who culturally they eat um, foods that permeate
Yep.
Yep.
Skin,
Skin.
and those
Yeah.
can be sensitive for those who are sensitive to smells. And um, I don't know, those are difficult. Those are difficult because they are culturally sensitive.
I think, thank you, Ruth, because, like I remember eating a heavy garlic meal. My mother never ate garlic, and I'd come home. I used to live with my mother, like when I was a young adult, and she would be like, oh, your breath is killing me. You ate garlic. I mean, whatever. So, but I think maybe the answer is we've got to have compassion. I mean, the perfume thing is a whole different deal, but for a body odor situation, I mean, we just got to have compassion and suck it up.
Yep.
And I'm fine
Well,
with that. I'm fine with that. Just haven't experienced it before. But I will tell you, for example, this is silly, but sitting on an airplane, I was sandwiched between two men. I am not kidding you. I wish I had a mask that day because I almost threw up because of not the body odor. One of them was passing gas.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was disgusting. It was so disgusting. And so, but it's just, I think at the end of the day, we have to, that's part of just having compassion. And I had to check myself in that airplane seat, and I was stuck in the middle. I was nice to both of the people on the side of me. We were there for a long time, and I just decided I quietly prayed, honestly, because I really was repulsed. It was awful. And at the end, had a feeling it was the guy to my left, and he really helped me with my bags at the end. And I just decided, you know what? It is what it is. I survived. I'm here. But anyway, whatever. You just got to have compassion, I guess, for people.
Okay, Michelle, and then let's move on.
I'm probably going to forget my deodorant and have BO.
I'm going to talk to you later, Charlotte.
I think maybe if that person has a close friend in the club, you might be able to talk to the friend, and they might have a better way of navigating that. I have a really good friend who has really terrible bad breath. And but because we're so close, if I can, I can say, hey, do you need a mint? Like, that's her cue. She knows immediately what I'm saying. And she appreciates that because it helps save embarrassment, her own embarrassment with other people.
Yeah.
So that would be my only suggestion, is it coming from somebody that is already close to that person, and can do it in a way that where they understand them.
Yep. All fair. So as we move on, again, none of these things are wrong. It's not wrong to have an alcohol event. It's not wrong to meet at noon. None of those things are wrong. It's just all about identifying when we make certain choices of things, what's happening around us. Are we excluding someone that we don't want to exclude? And it's kind of, I think we've touched a lot on about the more kind of variety we can create, the more we can try to draw different and more people in to our activities. So I'm going to move into a couple other scenarios that these are more about kind of moving from awareness to action, which is where we now want to be. Okay. So here's scenario one, and we kind of touched on this in a previous workshop. So a newer member who attends regularly never speaks or volunteers to do anything. The current club leaders assume that she's not that interested or not engaged. So what might be happening beneath the surface that we're not aware of when we jump to a conclusion that someone's not interested or engaged?
Well, I can say I know a couple of people who happen to have the type of personality where they really need to be asked. They want someone to ask them to help. They're not confident enough, or whatever it is that they're lacking, to just want to volunteer.
Yep.
Or at least, to offer, especially something like chairing a committee.
Yep.
And that's a hard thing as a newer member, especially.
There's a lot of times people are just waiting to be asked. Yeah.
Yep.
Emma?
Yeah, I was going to say that sometimes it's the confidence of never doing it before. And because of that, that's a huge barrier. It's like, oh, I've never done this before, so why do that? And so sometimes being the person to say, hey, would you like to do this? And I'm happy to help you through this. And trust me, I'm not going to throw you in the water and just watch you drown. I'll be there with you the whole way. And let's do this together. That's much more inviting than just saying, hey, do you want to do this? Sign up and good luck.
Yep. Great example. So things that might be happening, and you're touching on this, they're still learning. They're still learning the culture of our club. They're learning terminology. It's going to take them more time to engage because they're still just kind of taking it all in and not ready to just jump in and volunteer for the first thing. So that could be happening. Could be the new member just doesn't feel knowledgeable enough yet to chair an event. Maybe they want to attend the event first, and maybe chair it next year. Just kind of still developing their own expertise around something. Maybe they don't understand how assignments get made. Like, do people sign up? Do they get asked by the president? Do they, what? Like, still understanding how those sorts of things happening in a club. Or maybe past experience in some other organization or even in your own club that have taught you that it's safer to stay quiet. We talked about that. We talk about stifling conversation and creativity. So we don't want to do that. Maybe she hasn't been invited. So here are some common but unhelpful reactions to this situation. We can make this assumption. She'll speak up when she's ready to volunteer. I'm not going to push her. I'm going to wait for her to say she's ready. Not helpful because maybe she just, like Emma's suggestion is great. I encourage you to do this and I will help you along the way. I'm going to throw you to the wolves. Maybe our assumption is if she wanted to help, she would volunteer. So she must not want to help, right? Ignore it entirely. Just let that person continue to come and not participate and just ignore it altogether because you have enough other people participating. But those are all things that aren't helpful reactions. More helpful reactions include things like personally checking in one-on-one. Doesn't have to be in a meeting all the time. Just follow up after. Hey, I noticed you weren't volunteering for something. Let's just talk about it. Invite someone to do a very specific, maybe a low risk role. Don't maybe start with, hey, will you chair this huge committee event? But maybe, will you help me do this one thing? Write an email, whatever. I don't even have an example. There are lots of things that need to happen in our clubs that people can do that isn't making a huge commitment. Because I think the thing that I see in our clubs is with risk often comes not reward. It often comes criticism about how you do something. And so when we are critical of people making the effort to do something and maybe they're changing it up a little bit, if we're critical, then is the next person going to want to step up and do that? Absolutely not. And I say this a lot about how we treat our club presidents and other board members in our clubs. Like, if we're not nice to them, if we tell them everything we do wrong, if we tell them they're not good leaders, whatever we say, then are you going to want to be president? No, like, we have to be kinder. To Emma's point, pairing someone with a mentor or buddy, maybe asking for input in writing instead of in person. Maybe someone has trouble orally communicating their thoughts, but maybe with some time to think about and absorb it, maybe you're dealing with a member who's more of a better expressing herself in writing or some other forum. So invite different avenues of participation than just raising your hand in a meeting. So those are some ideas. So again, our job is to create pathways into our clubs for inclusion and participation and not waiting for people to kind of open the door for you. We want to open the door for them. We don't want to make them open it themselves. Okay, here's a very common scenario, and we're going to end with this. The same members rotate through leadership. Everyone else is saying they're not ready or they're not the right fit for a role. So what might be driving this pattern?
Well, I can think of, never mind, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. I my concern in that scenario is if it is always the same people doing it, then again, no one's going to feel, or very few people are going to have the confidence to step up and say, you know what, I'd really like to try that. Because Susie and Annie have always done that. So I'm not going to feel like I want to be the one to say I can do it.
Yep.
And it happens way too often in our clubs.
Yep. Michelle?
One of the things I loved about our club when I first joined is that the very first meeting back after the summer, I can't remember who it was, passed around a piece of paper that had all of the different things that you could do in the club, and then just like empty spots, and some people had their names in it already, because that's what they've done. But there was still space underneath it, like like the Christmas store was taken, but there was still lines underneath it if you wanted to help with the Christmas store. So then you didn't feel like you had to chair it necessarily. You could be a support person, and so everybody was able to. I like the writing down thing. Everybody was able to pass it around the room, and they were able to look at it and go, "Oh, I like that's something I didn't even know existed." And I did, I saw Sunshine Lady and I'm like, oh, that's me. I totally want to do that. And I signed, but I would have never ever known as a new member that job even existed.
Right.
Yep. And so I loved that. I love that part about our club, and we still do that every year. Like that's like the first meeting where you want, hey, here's your chance to move around. If you've done this for a long time, maybe you want to switch over to this.
That's great.
And we have 2 or 3 new members on our board this year. So I think that it really helps make people think that they can, that they can step into roles when they have the time to do so or whatever.
Yep.
I love our club.
Tammy?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I appreciate what Emma said about the confidence, because I think that oftentimes people, when they're newer, they don't know that they can do it. They don't think they can. Maybe they're afraid to ask if they can, or they don't think they have time. We're experiencing that, I think, with our club, because we have a lot of newer members, and because we had some people leave, and so now we're going to experience some growth pains. But that being said, maybe they just need to be encouraged, and so I hope that we encourage our newer members.
Yep.
That's all. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read through some of these things that might be causing this, right? Maybe our leadership expectations aren't clear, or maybe they're intimidating. If you have a president that does everything, then it looks impossible to someone who doesn't lead in the same way. Like they are maybe more of a delegator, more, action by consensus, and as opposed to a president who's very decisive. So you just have to be aware of how it appears. Sometimes it's time commitment. If the time commitment feels impossible, then yeah, someone's not going to step into that role. Informal gatekeeping is what I call it, which is like kind of, you can't be president unless you know X amount of things. And I remember saying to incoming president a couple of years ago, because she said, I just don't know that much about Seroptimus. I'm gonna be a horrible president. And I said, no, you're a great leader. You're gonna be a great president. You can learn the knowledge of Seroptimus. You can learn how our programs work, but you've spent your entire career learning to be a good leader. That's not going to happen overnight. And so, yeah, confidence does not equal capability, right? You have very capable members, that don't know they can be president because they haven't had the opportunity or they have not been willing to try it. You never know. Sometimes, and some of our clubs are better at this than others, but sometimes there's not really a visible on-ramp to leadership, right? How do I get on the board? How do I become the president? Some clubs have a very clear, succession planning. Others don't. Others, every year it's a guess and free for all. I think where we have that kind of on-ramp, it seems to work better. I think people kind of like having a governor-elect. You get 2 years of, really intense on-the-job training. And I think more of our clubs need that. Now, sometimes you'll have a president-elect that's, doing great, and all of a sudden they go away, and then you have a gap, and you have to deal with that. But those are some of the reasons why we might not be attracting new leaders all the time. We have clubs that just rotate back and forth every year. This year you're the president, I'm the treasurer, and next year it's the opposite, and they just go back and forth. It's hard to sustain a club that way. And you're not also giving others the opportunity to lead and be in that position. Some things that we do that are not helpful, or assumptions that we make. We maybe assume that someone doesn't, I hear this all the time, well, they'll never do it. They'll never say yes. And then, but if you haven't asked, you don't know that. And I do this too. I'm guilty. I learned, as I was coming into being governor and selecting committee chairs and committee members. And Beth and I had a lot of discussion about this, and it was surprising to me, like how many people said yes with no question asked. Like I didn't expect that. I expected a lot more people would say no. And so that taught me a lot about just the value of asking someone. And sometimes someone does say no, but they're glad to be asked. We make an assumption that we can't risk having an inexperienced person in a role. And sometimes that's not a great assumption. Again, I go back to the example of a club that's not here tonight, with a marvelously competent, capable career leader who was still relatively new to the club, maybe been in 2 years, and was very nervous because she didn't know everything about how everything worked, but one of the most capable leaders I've ever met. And so we can't assume that inexperience is going to be the key to success in a role. Also assuming if someone wants to do it, they'll volunteer. I think we've kind of touched on that. Sometimes someone needs to be asked, and there's value in being asked as opposed to just stepping up. And I know this happened in our club. We had a nominating committee. Our nominating committee, kind of one of the members said, well, I guess it's my turn, I'll be president. And then we had a member who was relatively new who after that said, well, I wanted to be president. Nobody asked me. And so we were able to kind of make that happen, but we can't assume that people don't want to do something. And maybe they've said no 9 times, and maybe on the 10th time they're going to say yes. You just never know. Things that we can do better. Be very clear in defining what the leadership roles are and what the time expectations are. We also don't want to really super promote someone to take on a role if they truly don't have the time or the commitment to it. Like I've seen that mistake a lot as well. Also, and we have clubs that do this, break roles into smaller ones. We have clubs with co-presidents and they divide up the work and just focus on different things, and that can work really well. I'm not saying it always works, and it just depends on how you define it, but it can work. Again, I think just expressing and sharing that you're confident in someone's ability, not just it's your turn, but you'd be a really great leader for us for the next year. Just the way we say things and the way we make invitations. Again, something Emma touched on is or somebody else did, co-chairs, have shadow roles. You may want to take on this committee next year. So this year you're not the chair, but you're going to follow me and do everything I do and learn. And then I think, especially at the committee level, committees I think are just as prone to kind of having the same person chair year after year after year. And you're doing that, you are kind of eliminating someone else from doing that, and also kind of reducing your ability to do something innovative and creative and new. So Michelle, your example of every year we start over with no assumptions. I know that doesn't always work because people still like to feel like they own something and that's their pet project. And that's not necessarily bad. But if we want to be inclusive, we need to provide those opportunities to everyone. You know, we're going to grow leaders, and we're going to have people willing to move into board roles and ultimately up into a president role and then up to the region level if interested, by giving them opportunities, not by shutting them down. So the more opportunities we can provide, however small, it's going to grow people's confidence and skills and knowledge, and make them ultimately stronger leaders in our clubs.
I have a comment. As far as like with sharing that knowledge, I've always had this approach in business, and I tend to have this approach in our club is sharing the knowledge with my inner perspective that if I get hit by a Mack truck tomorrow, I don't want what I know to die with me.
Yep.
And I have that approach in work. And I think that in our clubs, it's that much even more so, whether it's having a shared drive where you keep all your documents, or things like that, but making sure that others know that you don't think that what you're doing in the club is top secret. It's the club's. It's not yours.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, Loretta.
I just wanted to say, who was talking about snow day? Who did
Kelly.
that? We have it here. I've got hail outside.
Oh, no.
covering my whole yard.
You're not that
And
far
it's
from
all
me.
over my car and my truck. So
Snow day in the city.
I've got a snow day tomorrow. No.
That a girl. Send me pictures. I'm going to use them for my boss.
Okay.
Yeah, see, snow. This is my yard. Charlotte,
No,
and then we're gonna move
it was
on.
coming. I lost connection and everything. I'm using my neighbor's internet connection.
Oh
Oh
no.
my gosh, that's crazy, Loretta.
The
'Cause you're in
thunder was really loud and the lightning and everything. We got the whole package.
That's exciting.
Great. I'm about to go outside, so.
I just want to, Judy, I just want to give a shout out real quick to somebody that's on here because today, and she modeled excellent leadership today. So can I just tell you real quick? I'll try to be super quick. But when we talk about someone like always doing the same thing, well, we're not building an opportunity for leaders to shine. And today I witnessed a member in our club who's here tonight, who is chair of our Live Your Dream program, and that is Ruth Bright. And she has a committee of 4 or 5 people. And today we had a beautiful Live Your Dream award ceremony. And we had 5 women we were celebrating and awarding. And I sat there in the audience watching, and I was so happy that Ruth asked each one of her committee members to present one of the awardees. And Ruth, I mean, I told her that afterwards. I think I told you that, but I'm telling you, that was huge because you gave a chance for another member to develop, to shine, whatever. I mean, you gave another person a chance to show up. And, you know, there's all different personalities. Some people like to talk, you know, some people are fine, you know, some people are really quiet and shy. And you had every single person on your committee present an award and talk about the person and allow the person to speak and hand them the certificate and the money and blah, blah, blah. And it was a beautiful thing. So I just want to commend you because that is showing, that's modeling good leadership.
Thank you.
Yep, good example. Thank you. Okay.
I'll just make a comment. I did that for 2 reasons. One, for the reason that you described, and then the other reason is to make or have the recipients feel like they had a personal buddy that day.
They
were
knew
buddied
someone in
up with
advance,
them.
yeah.
Yes, and that was something that I want the Live Your Dreams recipients to feel as comfortable as possible. So there was a dual purpose there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I like to do that too. So I'm not going to show you this on the screen, but I have developed a practical checklist for you. So things to think about as it's kind of an actionable framework, if you will, as you go into planning and either, you're in a leadership role in your club or a committee, it doesn't matter what kind of leadership your role in. But it's just kind of like 4 little questions. Who benefits from this? Who might I be leaving out without realizing it? What assumptions am I making about people's ability to do this thing? And what's one small adjustment I can make to be more inclusive? So I'm going to send that out. It's a little bit, it's basically getting at those 4 points. But I have it and I'll share it with Chris. She'll put it up on the website under Leadership Academy. So I'm going to end with that. Except I am going to ask you, you don't have to do it right now, but I think in the very near future, I would like you to commit to one small thing that you personally can do within your club to make it more inclusive. It could be something you have control over, or it could be something you bring to your club president if you're not one. But what's one, and it doesn't have to be a big change. It can be a little change. Just what's one thing that you could do to make your club more inclusive. And remember, this isn't going to happen overnight. We're not exclusive one day. We don't ever set out to be exclusive, but it takes time, it takes effort, it takes everybody thinking, not just you. It takes all of your members thinking about what's happening around me, who's not talking, who's not here, who should be here, who's not represented. What opportunities can I create? How can I elicit feedback or information from someone that's not readily sharing? It could be anything, but one small thing I'd like you to ask to commit to between now and the end of this club year that help you as you move into the next year. And remember, inclusion isn't just something you do once. It's a constant reminder, and it starts with the mindset, right? Mindset is 90% of the battle. Once you acknowledge and recognize, I may be leaving someone out, then you can make a change. You have the tools to make the changes. You all know what these are. You all give the answers. It's just being aware and noticing, and you're not alone. Don't count on yourself. If you're president and you have an agenda and you're running a meeting, you have a lot of things to think about. Rely on your other club members to help fill in and say, hey, I noticed, we did this thing, and this person will never be able to come to that, and here's why. And it just gives you something to think about. So definitely work together and make this kind of a long-term practice. And I think and hope that you all feel like focusing on this and thinking about it should make our club stronger. Like saying, we're going to have different meeting times and maybe, switch up our activities a little bit more and start breaking down some of the barriers that we put in place completely unintentionally. Breaking tradition, don't assume that's going to make things worse. I think we have to assume it's going to make things better. So thank you for being here. I know we went really long tonight, but your feedback is so critical, and appreciate you all being here. We have one final workshop on this topic, which is just called Keep Moving Forward. That'll be the end of me. And we'll just sort of bring this all to closure and where we take it going forward as we move into our next club year. I'm going to stop the recording, but we can continue to